Welcome, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Co-Girls on Air, a podcast exploring all things technology, female leadership, careers, education, and topics within the nonprofit sector. On this episode, we will be interviewing Beth Schecher, who is one of the founders of Co-Girls United. So let's join Michaela and Beth to hear more about her story.
Well, hello, Beth. Thank you so much for joining us on Co-Girls on Air today.
Hey, hi, Michaela.
Do you think you could start by just introducing yourself and then walking us through the timeline from when you were in school to kind of how you got involved with Code Girls?
Sure. So I actually graduated from college in 1975 with a degree in computer science. Mm-hmm. And I went to work for Grumman Data Systems, who was the computers arm of the Grumman company that made the moon launcher and all this other stuff. Anyway, then I went to work for IBM, short-lived because I was bored, and I get bored easily. And then I went to work for a competitor of IBM's and in the Philadelphia area, and was there a couple years, got bored. Got an offer to work in Germany for Siemens, and so I was there for 2 years.
Oh, that's exciting.
It was for someone who was 27 years old, all by herself. It was quite the adventure.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, luckily I had studied some German.
Oh, that's good. That I'm sure came in handy.
Yes, it came in handy, although I still felt like I knew nothing. But I learned a lot there and got bored. So then
I love this pattern we have going on.
I know, it's becoming apparent to me. So I came home. I went back to work for the company that I had left when I was in America. Worked there for a while, and while I was there about 8 years, and I got my master's in business.
Because that whole time you were working in tech, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And by the way, I was not doing any coding at all. So we were doing, in the beginning, I was doing problem solving, software problem solving. And toward the end, doing sales support, technical sales support, why a company should buy our equipment over somebody else's. And also, if there was a problem with software, find that too.
Gotcha.
So then what happened? So then after I got my master's, I went to work for Conrail, which is a railroad that doesn't exist anymore. But it was really quite fun. I was in charge of the software for the railroad.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, so it was not the way I first went in there, but that's what I got to before I left. And I decided when they started letting people go and firing people for no apparent reason, which happened a lot back then, that was in the early 90s, I decided that the only way to prevent that was to open my own business. Mm-hmm. So I took some time to figure out what I was interested in. So my husband and I opened up a health food store.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in Trenton, New Jersey.
Wonderful.
Yep. And so that's quite an experience.
Yeah.
Running your own business, especially retail, where you have to be there all the time.
Yeah.
Open 7 days a week.
Wow.
And all the things that go with that. So that was really cool. So after about 5 years, I got bored. And
5 years, though, that's a while to own your own business and start it from scratch.
Yeah. I mean, it took a while to get it going and started slowly and whatnot. Sold that business and moved to Tucson, where kind of hung out for a while. And when was it? In about 2010, I started a business consulting practice, and which I moved back to New York, to Long Island, and learned a lot there about having a business where you're working from home and you're on your own and there's kind of nobody to talk to.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I learned.
Well, that was way less heard of back then as opposed to post-COVID where everyone works from home.
Exactly. And, yeah, I decided that was not for me. I was much happier when I was around people. I'm more of a collaborator.
Yeah.
I like to collaborate. Then I decided to move to Montana. I had this dream of opening a bed and breakfast. So I came to Montana to see what it was like to have a bed and breakfast. After 2 years, I was like, oh, my God, I'm not doing that. That is so much work.
Yeah.
A lot of work. A lot of people, but a lot of work. And meanwhile, I was continuing my business consulting practice.
Oh, wow. So you took that from New York over to Montana.
Because it was virtual, and
Yeah.
I had clients, over the computer systems. Then it was over the phone because I couldn't convince people to get, on the screen
Right,
and whatnot.
of course.
So I moved here and was looking for community, looking for things to do. I read the paper, and there was an article about Code Girls when you guys were at Sykes Diner and what you had done. And I read Marianne's story about dropping her box of punch cards, in between classes. I'm like, that is so me, so relatable. That was me in college. I'm going to send this gal an email. And that was how I got introduced to Marianne. And she said, come down to Russell. We're going to start. And that's when I started with Code Girls, was right then and there.
Wonderful. And with Code Girls, you helped kind of turn us into a nonprofit officially, right?
Yes. The joke is always I was the dissenting vote when they said, who wants to become a nonprofit? And I'm like, not me. That's like a lot of work.
That's a lot of work.
A lot of work for someone who's kind of retired.
Yeah.
But since I'm a team player, I was like, okay, let's do it. And so Marianne, Liz, and I, took the steps necessary to keep that going. And, we like to look back on the old days of, bringing in our own pens and paper and staplers and, like all this other stuff just to get things done.
Using your own supplies, yeah.
Absolutely, donating, more than just your time. And it was great because I learned a lot about running a nonprofit.
Yeah.
As opposed to running a for-profit business.
Yeah.
Yeah, but way different.
Well, and it's cool that you had both experiences. You had your own business, both the health food and the consulting, and then to switch over to nonprofit. And did you learn most of that when you got your degree?
When you get your degree, you do learn a lot of basic stuff, that you don't even realize it's important, finance classes, accounting classes, but also managerial classes. You get a lot of background. I think most of my experience came from observation, listening, always taking classes. Nowadays, it's so much easier for especially young people, but anybody to learn. When I was, getting out of college, the way we learned things was through books. We read, but one of the first books I read that was helpful was How to Make Friends and Influence People. Have you heard of that book?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. And so it was Dale Carnegie. And it was, a classic. But I had to read it. Nowadays, you can get on, anywhere online, get a course, even get lots of snippets. I get them all the time on Instagram. People giving you helpful tips.
YouTube too.
Yeah, how to get along with people and how to manage situations, things like that. So, I just spent a lot of time observing and also watching different things, different businesses, and what they do wrong. I'm kind of, it's awful to be with me and I walk into business because I'm looking at the business. I don't care if it's an ice cream shop or whatever, an accounting business. I go in and I'm looking like, who came up with that slogan? And so I have to be careful and not say anything.
No, I get you. Do you think we could back up a little bit? Because you worked in tech for 20 years, right?
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what that was like being a woman in that field back then?
Sure. So it was the 70s, mid-70s. And when I graduated with my degree in computer science, which was very rare, first of all, to have that degree.
Yeah, just in general, right?
Right. I didn't even know it was offered until I got to college and took my first computer class and wanted to keep going. I was, there was like 2 women in our graduating class of a big school. And so I got a job and naively didn't understand there was a difference between men and women in the workplace. But so it was hard. There was a lot of prejudices. The joke I had with my IBM friends, girlfriends who I still know, back then, we'd go shopping all the time looking for like a suit to wear.
Yeah.
Or heels, like plain black pumps or some kind of shoe to wear that, was appropriate. They just didn't make clothes for business women.
Wow.
So it was very different. I had clients that, like with IBM, different customers I go to, I've had them literally yell at me, tell me never to tell their boys what to do. I had been threatened. It was.
Oh my!
I cried. I was upset.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I would too.
Yeah. So it did get better over time. But, it was just harder. It was a new thing in the 70s to have women in that kind of role. So just kind of went on.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, and that kind of leads into my next question. How did you kind of handle those setbacks and failures, and how did you learn from them when you were in those cases?
Yeah. I think what I learned was to survive was to just shut up, not to make a big deal out of it, because that made things worse. So if I wanted to keep my job, there were not a lot of jobs around then. And if I wanted to keep my job, because I was supporting myself, that I had to roll with it. And so unfortunate. But so the good news is we've made a lot of progress since then.
Yeah. That's very good. What do you think is one piece of advice you'd give to a woman starting out in tech?
I would say
nowadays, after it's shifted.
I would say that get the tech stuff down, understand it, know it. That stuff you can be taught. But the rest of it, I would say, is to take a lot of time to observe and to be aware. And so and this is really in any job, I think. Pay attention to what people are doing, what they're saying, how they're behaving. Be aware of your own reactions and responses. And then see if there's a different way you can respond that would work better. Or just observe people that seem to be doing everything, really well. And say, well, what is it they're doing that made that work well? And kind of really dive into that. These are skills I didn't learn till I was probably in my 50s. Because when you're young, you're too busy, focused on other things.
Yeah.
But if you can, and I think you've probably seen that in Code Girls with our teams, when the girls talk nice to each other or when they stop and listen to each other, things work much better. When they're all trying to one-upmanship each other, it's like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah.
So, but it takes a lot of focused attention.
Yeah.
I don't think in many ways it's natural. And like I said, there's lots of ways you can get online, get coaching and tips.
Yeah. You can learn a lot. You can be YouTube taught easily now.
Yeah. And if something's really bothering you, get help. Get support. We talk a lot nowadays about mental health. And so it's not the stigma that it used to be. So get some help, get some support, and get some tools to help you to be emotionally stable in the workplace. So you can go ahead and do your job, be helpful to other people. It's not a competition. And also remember the big picture. Why are y'all working, for this company or for this project?
Yeah.
What's the bigger picture? Don't forget that. And especially with Code Girls, we say that all the time.
Yeah.
What's our mission? Does it fit in with our mission? And are we, moving our mission along by doing this? So the same with a for-profit organization.
Yeah. Well, it's like you always say, what's the purpose?
That's my first question always.
Yeah. So after tech, you went into business, and what was kind of your strategy for success starting a business on your own from scratch? What do you say? A couple of them, I guess.
Yeah, good question. One was starting small and not overextending finances. In other words, we financed ourselves. But so to start small, do what you could with the finances you had and with the knowledge you had. See what test the water, see what the clients really want, what they're interested in, and make those adjustments. And then grow according to your clients and, who you're trying to attract, who's your target, right?
Yeah, your target market.
Yep. I think that was our biggest strategy. And, since I said I do get bored, not just changing things because I was bored, but to know if you're going to make a change, that there's a reason for it and a purpose.
And a purpose.
That's your purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. And would you say you kind of had the same strategy going into your consulting business too? Starting small Or was that's kind of a different field than retail?
It's a very different field than retail. When you're doing business consulting, it's a very big trust issue. Mm-hmm. People are sharing their business, with you, their business secrets, their vulnerabilities. Why, as a head of a company, am I screwing up? Mm-hmm. And so you have to build trust, and that takes a long time, mm-hmm. and it can take a long time to build that trust before they become a client. Mm. A client I still have today, I knew 3 years before he became my client.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, and he finally said, "Oh, I get it. I guess I should hire you." And I didn't even ask, right? I'm like, yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
Good idea. I'd recommend it. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's certain businesses that trust is very important,
mm-hmm.
Like accounting, financial advisor, people where you're handling their money.
Yeah.
And so trust is a very, very big deal.
Yeah.
And that was the most important thing. And then with business consulting is to keep on top of what's going on in business, the trends, mm-hmm. who's hiring. I remember doing a lot of reading on the generations. There weren't as many back then.
Right.
But how they thought, how the digital revolution influenced the way they worked and thought and what they wanted. So just constantly updating your knowledge
mm-hmm.
and staying current. Being flexible,
mm-hmm. yeah,
and not being abused, and feeling free to fire a client whenever it's not working out. So,
yeah. So, how long did you have? I might miss this. How long were you in your consulting business before you joined Code Girls again?
Code Girls was when I came was 17. So about 7 years.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And so when you were on with Code Girls, did you jump in very much right away, or did you kind of stay back for a while?
Oh, no. I had to jump in. But it wasn't that much to jump into then. It was really coming to class,
mm-hmm.
teaching, because I had to learn how to code again. I mean, I had to learn how to use App Inventor.
Right.
And
which is a whole other little...
Well, yeah, I think it took me 3 years to figure it out. But and I still ask Marianne questions like, I did that. But, yeah, so that was different for me. But it was good for me. It
mm-hmm.
made my brain, think in a different way,
mm-hmm.
and realize I still loved coding and, solving problems.
Yeah.
I loved working with the girls. I
mm-hmm.
still do.
Yeah.
I love watching them from day one in the fall to progressing through to the final, presentation at the end. And there's lots of ups and downs and whatnot. But being able to, at the age of 70, to be able to pass on that wisdom to young mm-hmm. girls, it's just, I love to see them grow.
Yeah.
And even if they don't continue with Code Girls for, a long time or whatever, right. they've still got things out of it that they will never forget.
Yeah. There's so many skills you learn and use in every field, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, kind of as we wrap up here in a couple minutes, what do you think has been what you've taken away from Code Girls besides just being able to see them progress? Has there been anything else that you've really learned?
Me personally,
mm-hmm.
I think learning the nonprofit industry has been super valuable. Particularly learning about foundations and funders
mm-hmm.
and what they're looking for, why they exist, and versus why a nonprofit like Code Girls exists, being boots on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
They have foundations have the money,
mm-hmm.
we have the boots on the ground, and we help them accomplish their mission, which, I mean, it's a great thing.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing. Plus, for me personally, was to be part of a community mm-hmm. that is doing good. And it is funny still, when I talk to people and I'll say, oh, I work with this nonprofit. We teach girls to go. And they'll be like, I love that nonprofit.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you've heard of them?
You've heard of us.
Oh, yeah, and they're doing this and they're doing that. I'm like, mm-hmm.
I'm like, yep. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Do you have any last closing thoughts or advice you'd give to these little girls starting out?
I'd say for the little girls, find out what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Find out what makes you happy to do.
Mm-hmm.
What you love to do. It might be easy for you. It might take a little bit of work, but find out what makes you happy
mm-hmm.
and kind of go with that.
Well, thank you so much. This is wonderful. Thank you for being on.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Next week on Co-Girls on Air.
I would say for these girls and young women, just know that you have everything that you need inside of you. It's really just about building confidence. And I think that's something that we do a great job of with young boys. We tell them, like, you're so strong and powerful and you're always right, and like go out there and conquer. But I feel like the same just isn't instilled in young girls for, just different societal reasons and like the culture that we've been brought up in. Mm-hmm. So I think that just knowing that you are just as smart as the boys, you are just as powerful as they are, and just because they say they know everything and state things like a fact, even if it's not correct, but just keep that in mind where you're not lesser than, or you're not as smart or not as powerful just because of your gender. You actually are, and you're just maybe underestimated. So I think just go out and prove people wrong.